Hello and welcome to this week's part number 3 of Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self. What is Becoming Your Greatest Possible Self? It's a weekly 12-hour personal development live stream marathon where we share great ideas, we interview great role models, leaders who are changing the world, and people making a difference to help you and equip you with tools, resources, and connections so that you can create your reality, master yourself, and be, do, and have anything you desire. Good or good? Very good. I'm your host, Chris Burns, America's #1 motivational speaker for fiery inspiration, and thank you so much for showing up today. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Tim's jumping on right now. Bring in the heat. Bring in the heat. I feel it. I feel him. The force is awakening in Tim Starr. There he is. I knew it. I knew he was coming. Coming with a fury. What's up, brother? How are you? Where is the kid? I love it, man. I'm going to read your intro, and we're going to rock and roll. You ready? Awesome. Cool. Give me 1 sec. Ladies and gentlemen, at the age of 54, Tim lost a job of 15 years with a phone call. It would be almost 2 years before he worked again, but he never suffered the depression or down times the experts say he should have. He began asking himself why not, and realized that the materials he'd been consuming since he was much younger had been programming his mind to have a different perspective on life. That perspective has saved him from immeasurable amounts of stress, anxiety, and grief. Focusing on coping with life transitions, he now shares those ideas with others who struggle with those feelings and are ready to begin the process of overcoming the overwhelm and beginning to breathe again. Tim, you ready to rock and roll?
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, baby. We're rocking and rolling. Thank you so much for coming on the show and taking
sounded
time.
Pretty good. I'm anxious to hear this guy. I don't know.
Right? That intro, though, is like, whoa, yeah. Who's this? So, seriously, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts, everyone listening, everyone, including me. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to share with us how to go through transitions successfully and for being on here to share your value and your experience with us, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, really. I've been looking forward to this. I actually thought we were doing this next week, so I got up this morning and said, oh, Chris has tagged you in this thing. Uh-oh.
Still making it happen. Right. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being the champ, a trooper. I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a treat tonight. Tim, before we start diving into the transition mindset and how we do that in our own lives, I'm sure you have some examples of your own life, from your own life, that you can take us through. Tell us about the challenges, some of the journey that you've gone through to get to where you are today, to catch us up to speed.
Well, I'm flashing back to the Steve Martin movie. I was born a poor black child. I don't know. I my childhood overall, I think, was pretty good. Went through stuff. Everybody goes through stuff. Something that did happen to me that not everybody has to worry about is I was hospitalized for an ulcer when I was 6 or 7. And I remember pieces of that being in the hospital and you know, when I had visitors, when my mother was there and stuff, you know, I felt fine. And then visiting hours were over and they got to go. And suddenly my stomach hurts, you know. And that was kind of probably the signature for how I was dealing with things in my life. Really, it was really, I held things in and had really a difficult time expressing things for a really long time. But I had more or less pretty normal life. High school and all that nonsense that happens in high school and all of that stuff. But the big thing and really sort of if there's one event that brings you and me together, it's losing the job, right? And it's supposed to be, as a middle-aged man, that's supposed to be a big deal. You're supposed to be, you identify with your job and all of that. And I literally was a phone call on a Friday morning, and the guy said, today's your last day, go home. And there was no thanks for all your years of service. There was no severance. I was a contractor, so there was no severance pay. There was not even a pat on the back, So went home, and my wife was at home. She was not working also. So that made life interesting in the moment. But, for various reasons, I didn't work then for a couple of years, and partly by choice and partly not by choice. But as you mentioned in the intro, I didn't get depressed. I didn't go through the why me and what's next and I don't deserve this stuff. Really, I felt relieved. And what had happened was that I get into this job, and I was the only in-house tech support person for the New York Life general office in San Diego. And about 2 or 3 years in, maybe 4 years in, I realized that I had pretty much learned everything new that I was going to learn on that job. It really wasn't going to take me anywhere. But I enjoyed the job. Right? I enjoyed the people I was providing services for. My time was really flexible, and I could come and go as I needed, when I needed. If I wanted to take a long lunch, I could. 2-3 hours, it could be done. I worked overtime too without any extra pay. It's just, there's a trade-off, Yep. And I was making pretty good money for what I was doing. But somewhere along the line, fairly early on, I had sort of started to think about I should really look into doing something else. I should find a way to start a side job repairing computers for people or something. And that thought really never went away, but I never was that motivated to do it because I had a pretty good deal where I was. And then, 10 years later, the universe decided to give me my freedom, which was what I'd been asking for. Yep. One way or another. And so I didn't feel like this was something being done to me. This was something I'd been asking for. And I didn't recognize that immediately, but it didn't take that long to go, well, you know what? It's kind of what I've been wanting to do is get out of there, So I owned it. Basically, it was my doing. So during the 2 years that it didn't work, I did a few different things. I finished writing my first book. I got it into my head that I wanted to do public speaking, and that would never, 5 years earlier, that just would not have been on the list at all. But I got a chance to go and talk to a school for at-risk kids in Riverside, California, about 100 miles away. And it was 2 different presentations for 2 different sets of kids. And at the first presentation, we got into talking about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book. And, I first of all, glass over the eye. Nobody had, there's no recognition in anybody's eyes. Kids, parents, maybe the teachers, but I wasn't really looking at them. But they had no idea what I was talking about. And I started explaining what was in there. This is on every top business leader's must-read list, but there's nothing about business in there. And, that got people thinking and start talking about vibration and frequencies and putting ideas out. And you can see eyes lighting up and smiles happening, and you can see the wheels turning. And when I left, then there were some people who approached me, who wanted to know more and stuff. And I walked away from that just going, I really want to do more of that. Because it's, you and I had a conversation the other day where this came out. It's really about, I think part of what we're all wanting to do while we're here is to change the world in some way. We want to contribute, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean changing the world, but if you touch one person's life, you've done something, right? And it's really, it's very cliche, but it's really satisfying. It's really heartwarming to do that. And so that was one of the motivators that made me want to expand out and help other people. And then I come, my background is blue collar. I came from the south side of Chicago, and for anybody who may not know, it's a huge part of the world that is blue collar. It's not just a big part of the city. It's like, you grow up there, you're proud to be blue collar. And which is great, but the issue is that the mindset there is work, and gripe about the work. And at the end of the week, you go blow off steam all weekend, and then on Monday you start over paying the bills and paying for the weekend, and you just repeat. And there's never much thought of, what other options do I have? And it's not that anybody wouldn't want to do something more, something better, something different. You just don't think about it. It doesn't come into the radar screen. And so those people, I even though I haven't done really blue collar work in a long time, I still, so that's who I identify with. Anybody that would self-identify as working class, a 9-to-5 person, that's I still identify, and I want to help them, and so that's part of what I want to do, is just sort of crack that door open for them a little bit, give them a little bit of a different idea, a little something new to look at. And everybody has to step through their own door. Yep. But, you need some new input, some different sources to come in to crack it open first.
Yeah. So what kind of new choices did you see after some of the personal development that you've done?
What happened to me was my mom was forever, she was a seeker. She was looking for the answers, but she was looking for the pill, right, the little blue pill. And when she ran into something that spoke directly to her, she didn't like it. She closed the book, went on to something else. But she exposed me to a lot of different ideas, a lot of different people, a lot of different modalities, and so, all kinds of stuff. And she did palm reading and astrology and tarot cards and just all kinds of things. So a lot of the stuff was just like, yeah, okay, Mama, but some of it was really, really interesting to me. And people like Wayne Dyer, Zig Ziglar. There's a guy named Robert Ringer who was really helpful for me. He wrote Looking Out for Number One and Winning Through Intimidation. Those are two big, I believe the first self-published million-seller books. And he sold multi-millions. They're still available. But Looking Out for Number One left me feeling like it had answered questions that I didn't even know that I had, and even stuff I couldn't put my finger on at the moment. It just felt like a weight had come off. It was a different perspective on taking care of yourself and things. And so all of this stuff over the years had just sort of, some of it had stuck. And so when certain things happen, a few years back, we lost a friend to pancreatic cancer, and he suffered for a long time before anybody knew, and the friends, his family knew, I guess, but we didn't find out about it until he had about 6 months left to go. And that was really tough. But had I not had these other ideas to lean on, it would have been a lot tougher. So it's things like that's how I came to be with the mindset that I have. It's just the stuff was interesting. I don't really study it in like the sort of the typical definition of study. I'm reading because it's interesting. I'm reading or listening because it sometimes it makes you think, and gets the mind going. And I'm a big Abraham Hicks fan, and the stuff that comes out of her mouth is just, it's just amazing. You know, she'll say something in an 8-word sentence, and I'm 20 minutes chewing on what she just said. You know, and that really, and she's the reason for my second book, because I had all this stuff going on, all these ideas were coming in, and I had to dump it out, and I created a blog, and now have turned that into a book, and I just got my proof copy on Monday, so I'm excited about that.
Heck yeah.
That's ready to go.
Sweet.
So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's how I came to be here, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads right into the next question of, you have all this information. How do you apply it now to transitions and empowering people through transitions? Well,
I'm working on another book, and it's about self-improvement, enlightenment, these general ideas. And in actually thinking about the things that I'm writing in this book, I decided that the law of attraction it doesn't really get explained, right? How it works or why it works. And there's science behind it. And anybody who's put any real thought into it, I think, would agree that there is science behind it, and quantum physics sort of proves it out. But, you know, the way I see it is there's something else, and I call it the law of transition. And law of attraction basically says, you decide you want something, you put the desire out there, and that influences what comes back. Well, why does that work? Because there's everything if nothing could move, then there's still physics involved. If nothing could move, then nothing could come back. Nothing could go out, right? So I started thinking about this, and I realized that I came up with my own law called the law of transition. And it basically says that anything that's in motion is changing. At the elemental level, everything in the universe is in motion. Therefore, everything in the universe is changing. So it's just a question of whether you can see it or not. So it's like, there's, and we talked about this also the other day, there's a lot of videos they're showing up for me lately on YouTube, where people are playing around with sand or beans or something on some sort of a surface, and they're shooting sound waves at it or vibrations of some kind, and changing the frequency of the vibrations changes that you get patterns with the stuff that's on the surface.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's going on. We're putting out thoughts with frequencies, and they're coming back with things that match the frequency. And it only can happen because you get stuff that can move. The stuff on the surface is able to reform. So that's kind of the focus that I have now. And I realized that, and this life event that happened to me, losing the job, was a transition, right? Everything it's change is another word for it. And I started kind of looking a little deeper and realized everything in your personal and professional life, everything you can point at is changing, right? And you may or may not be able to see it in the moment, but someday you wake up and go, oh my God, that's not the same,
right?
Good or bad,
right?
And so we have the option, because we know these things are happening, right? We can stick our heads in the sand. There's certain things that are going to happen to all of us, right? Death, taxes, and getting old, stuff. And we can deny them all we want. We can stick our heads in the sand and just pretend that it doesn't exist and hope it goes away or resolves itself, and hope the truck doesn't hit you in the ass. Can I say ass? Too late. Or you can do some things to sort of prepare yourself, and it really is just about how you think about it. Certain things are coming, and so you can plan ahead for those. Lots of things you don't know they're coming. And the only thing that saves you for those things is the way you think about it when it happens. And that was a big lesson that I got from Wayne Dyer. It's and he's not the only one to present it, but it's not the stuff that happens to you that determines how you feel about it. It's how you think about it. So then the question is, I'll ask you next question, is how do you think about it differently?
Yeah.
Well, we're walking around with computers between our ears that are constantly being reprogrammed, constantly. But the problem is we get so much data coming in every single second of the day, and we filter out virtually all of it. And brain keeps stuff that reinforces the programs that are already there. Mm-hmm. So if you want to think differently about anything, you've got to change the stuff that you actually take conscious notice of. So you got to stop, or at least minimize some of the negative programming that's coming in, right? And so number one, highest on my list, number 1, 2, and 3, turn off the TV news. Get rid of it. You never need to look at it, because if anything important happens, you're going to hear about it.
You're going to hear about it.
Friends, family, Facebook, you won't be able to avoid it.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's a bad idea because it's designed to shock, right? It's designed to grab you, because that shock is the same adrenaline jolt. It's the same endorphin jolt that we get from something pleasurable. But it's a whole lot easier to deliver. And it's addicting. It's the same reason people are forever on their phones checking, did I get another message? Did I get an email? It's the same thing.
Got a quick question for you. I don't know if you know the science.
Yeah, you're going to have to stop me like that.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Adrenaline and, what was the other one you said?
Endorphins.
Yeah. Okay. So anger, shock, nasty stuff versus pleasurable and joy and that kind of stuff. What happens in our brain? How do we codify it so one is like negative and we shouldn't program ourselves with those emotions, and one is positive and we should program ourselves with those emotions?
That's a value judgment. So what you may say is a negative, I might say I kind of like that. I want more of that. Right. There are people that are terrified of roller coasters. For them, that's a negative. Lots of people love roller coasters. So that's up to the individual. But what needs to happen is we need to be a little more consciously aware of what's coming in. And then you can start to make value judgments on a conscious level and say, oh, well, maybe that's not so good for me to be watching, and then that's a little better.
It also sounds like the meaning that we give it produces a certain frequency in our body, right? Like the same chemicals get released, but the frequency is not the same that is in our body. Yeah,
well, it changes. I'm not a scientist, but it changes what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And those thoughts have frequencies, thoughts have energy there, and we're walking around as radio transmitters and receivers all at the same time, right? So we're forever receiving stuff, but we're also forever transmitting.
Yeah.
And so it's a two-way thing that's going on 24/7. And so you have to, if you want to change your life, you got to start changing what you're putting out. And that happens by changing what you think about or how you think.
Beautiful.
It's simple, but not always easy.
Yeah. So how do we make it easier to process these transitions?
You got to start at the beginning. I would assume that anybody who's paying attention to this already feels the desire, or at least understands the need to be growing and changing, and to, what you're doing is you're protecting yourself for future pain. So assuming that much, then if we're starting at the beginning, let's say you're somebody who's just said, my life sucks and I want to do something about it. What do I have to do? So turn off the news, start to seek out people and source material that is different from what you're used to reading or listening to, right? If you hang around with a bunch of friends who are doing nothing but complaining about life, they're not helping you. And this is part of the problem that we face sometimes, is that we love our friends. We enjoy hanging out with our friends. They feed us emotionally and stuff. We're all on that same wavelength because I'm complaining about life too. if you don't want to be complaining, you need to turn to focus on something else.
Yeah.
And the reality is that as you start to grow and evolve and start to think in different ways, some of these people are going to fall away. You're going to catch flack from some of them, maybe. Who are you to think you're so high and mighty? Whatever, you know. And so you got to be aware that there's going to be changes in your life, you know. But something going away really just makes room for something new to come in. And so that's a beginning, is changing those sources that come in. You got to find stuff that you resonate with, that you can relate to. And that's a double-edged sword. It's good in the sense that, you know, you're probably going to be sampling a lot of different people, a lot of different kinds of ideas. The bad news is it may take you a little while to hit on something that really clicks.
Yep.
Right? But once you do, you'll know it. And then if you take that information and just start paying attention to it, I'm not even going to go as far as to say study it. Just consume it. Just pay attention to what they're saying. Give yourself the freedom to think about it a little bit. Come up with your own version of what they're saying. Whatever, you know. And you may get tired of somebody after a little bit, and that's fine. Move on to somebody else. And you don't have to limit yourself to one person. There may be 2 or 3 different people who are all giving you similar messages, and you like the delivery on all of them. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. There's, you know, another good and bad is that there's no one way to do this stuff. And so that's the good news, is you've got all these choices. The bad news is there's no cookie cutter way to do it, that nobody can tell you, oh, here it is.
Right.
You know, so part of it is you've got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
But when you find a little something here, a little something there that you really liked the idea of, you will notice at some point that things have started to shift for you. You started to you know, stuff that used to get under your skin, as little annoyances, don't bother you anymore. You know, and at some point you become aware of that. And that's kind of a cool thing when you go, oh, hey, you know what, all right, do it all you want, I don't care. You know, stuff like that. That's when you have to be looking for evidence that you're making progress, because it's not always big. Sometimes it's little things. And if you're looking for it, then they're easier to spot. And when you recognize that you're making progress, then you can get excited about it, and you'll naturally want to dive into it more and you know, give it more juice, you know, and then you pick up momentum. So that's baby steps in the beginning, you know, and you just have to find the process or the person that works for you. There's, unfortunately, it's like so many other things. There is not anybody who tells you this is the only way to do it is either lying or they don't know what they're talking about. It's that simple. There's 100 different ways. There's 1,000 different ways to accomplish this thing. And we're really not even, the goal is not get somewhere. The goal is learn some stuff as you're going through life, you know. Yeah,
be here. Find and discover the most joy possible. What do you have to do today to create more joy tomorrow? And love the process of creating more joy today for tomorrow.
yeah. And that's where I start with everybody, is the assumption that all we really want is to feel better today than we felt yesterday, and feel better tomorrow than we feel today.
Yep.
That's it. That's the only reason we do the things that we do. It's the reason we buy the cars and the big houses, and we go chasing the girls and everything. It's the only reason we think it's going to keep us happy.
That is so profound that so many people look over. Like that's the mindset of life. Like, do better than you did yesterday, and prepare a little bit. Do something today that makes tomorrow even better than today.
Right. But it all keeps coming back so often to being the observer of what you're doing and your thoughts, right? And in the beginning, what happens is you'll read something that somebody says about, you know, how you should react if somebody cuts you off in traffic, and how you should think about that. And the next day, somebody's going to cut you off in traffic, right? And you'll get mad and you'll react the way you've reacted forever. And then an hour later or a week later, you'll look back and go, well, I could have handled that differently. I wasn't supposed to do that. This is what I've been. This is what my new guru says I'm supposed to do, right? That's the beginning. That's the beginning, because in the past you never did that. In the past you just did your reaction and that was it. When things start to change, you start to become aware of what your thinking was in the past, at least, and then you close that gap over time. And then the ideal, which I'm not there, but I'm nobody's guru, but the ideal situation is we want to be sort of at two different levels when stuff is going on. Something happens, we want to be objectively seeing what's happening and objectively self-talking, so that our reaction, is a little better than what it normally might be. I just hit something and you went away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's those a little bit. That's what I was talking about. Is you got to be looking for the evidence, and some of it's just really little changes in how you think and stuff.
Beautiful.
So,
awesome. Love it. You also have a show called The Universe.
Yeah.
The Universe Between
Your Ears.
Your ears, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's a podcast. We have not launched yet. We just started recording interviews.
Awesome.
Looking forward to getting you on there.
Yes.
It's really about. Okay, I'm going to get really
dive deep, baby.
Really
dive
woo
deep.
woo on this. All right. There is nothing real in this world. Right? There is nothing physical in this world. Now, we have a physical experience of it, and that doesn't change. And I recognize that, and I'm not arguing that. And I have a physical experience of everything. But everything is going on between your ears. Right? It's all going on in the thoughts. It's not even in the brain so much. It's the mind. And the mind creates everything. So therefore, anything that is out there that is interesting to talk about, as long as it has to do with creating a better life for people, then we want to talk about it. So if it's law of attraction, that's an obvious one, but brain science, neuroscience, there's a woman who I know I don't know her. I met her. She does yoga combined with quantum physics, I think.
Love it.
Something about it to move. And I can't wait to get hold of her and talk to her.
Send her over to me after you're done with her.
Yeah. And so there, anything related, because the whole universe is between your ears, man. And it's a really cool thing to kind of wrap your mind around, because it means that anything is possible because I'm creating it.
Yep.
It also means that I'm responsible for everything I've created, and that's not always a pleasant thing for people. So that's a big piece of the whole puzzle too, is owning where you're at, the person that you are, and just being ready and willing to accept the responsibility for your situation. Because until you do that, you'll change your situation by somebody else changing it for you.
Yep.
Right? It's no decision is still a decision kind of thing. So that's what the show is about. And I've got a co-host who's a crazy man, and he wants to jump right into, and we both want to have juicy, conversations that matter, but he wants to jump right in from the first question. And I'm just like, no, you got to at least introduce the guest, and tell people who they are and what they're about a little bit, but so I can see going forward, I'm going to have to be pulling back on the reins but it's fun. So we're going into whatever direction the conversation takes us.
What do you see as the outcome from a year from now? Like what would be your ideal transitional growth of this show? What impact would you want to make? What would you want to do with it?
the thing that pops into my head immediately is top of the list is I just want to make people think. I want to give people stuff to chew on, because that's how we grow.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, you could listen to, you know, just to pick a name, you can listen to Tony Robbins all you want, right? But if you're not thinking about what he's saying,
Oh yeah.
then, you know, it's not going to do you much good. You got to really chew on it a little
Contemplate.
bit and absorb the ideas and make them part of who you are, so that then you're a different person. You've leveled up a little bit, and you know and when that happens, and you start to have a different viewpoint on the same things.
Yeah.
Right. Things look different. I was into photography for a little while, and one of the things that I realized was when you learn a little bit about framing a shot and the rule of thirds and things, you know, you end up experiencing the outside world in a whole different way. You're looking through the lens. You're looking through your world is here in the camera, and it's not out there. And it makes me think of like these, you see videos sometimes of some terrible thing is happening and the cameraman is just videoing the whole thing, not doing anything, you know, and you'll see comments and why would he do it? He's not there. He's not there. I mean, he's physically he's there, but he's looking through this camera. He's watching a show. And I think that's a big piece of it. That's not to let anybody off of any responsibility or anything else. I just think that's a big chunk of why that stuff happens. But where do we start before I ran down that alley? What did you ask me?
Outcome, impact, 1 year from now. Get people to think.
I want people to think about stuff. Yes. Yeah, and that's the primary thing. You know, we're doing it to have fun, but we're doing it because we love these conversations. Yeah. The two of us, we grow and we play off of each other in conversation, and we get his wife and my wife and me and him together and sit around and have some wine, and the conversations are really fun.
Yeah.
And you can get off onto some really obscure stuff, you know, and it's just fun. So that's top of the list. After that, would love to get some work out of it. I want to do more speaking and things. But it's really, you know, the great thing would be to hear from people and say, hey, this really meant something to me in whatever way, shape, or form. That would really put some juice to the fire for me. I'm sure for him. You know, change the world a little, I guess.
Yeah. So one thing, have you done Landmark? Did you say you did Landmark?
No.
It's a great personal development company. Awesome. One thing they talk about is having like a measurable result. Like what's the metric that we're going to be looking at? And that's in certain program later on, more of an advanced course. But like, what's if we could measure it? How would we measure that impact in reality that you fulfilled on that? You know, like let's put some like reality into the vision, and then trust that it's going to unfold perfectly from there. And how would we measure that impact? How many people reached? How many comments? How many new actions taken? How many something like a number?
Boy, that would. I'm not sure the number means anything, because if we had, you know, a handful of people downloading every episode, and once or twice a week we got a letter from somebody saying, "Hey, this was great. This really meant something." That's success, man.
I didn't say big number. I didn't say big number.
Okay, there you go. 5. Yeah, so I you know, if I could say, you know, I'm John Lee Dumas and I'm making $1 million off of it, or I got, you know, 100,000 downloads a month, great. Yeah. You know, great. You can't deny, but it means people are entertained. Yeah. But I love to laugh, right? And I hope other people will be entertained by the shows, but if they're not entertained, but they still tune in and then say, you know, I really like this. this means something to me somehow. That's more important.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Be percolating on it. Be percolating on how many new ideas, new people start a new venture. People are successfully able to handle transitions. If it's one, it's worth it, right? One person from the show, like that's I totally get that is your mindset. That's both of our mindsets. If it makes a difference for one person, then it's worth it. And like, what is it? Like, it's worth it, and what is really worth your time? What do you want to see, right? To make an impact, absolutely. Like, let's go. Balls to the wall, one person. Thank God we got to change one person's life and not none.
Right.
And, like, what would be the minimum that would make it, like, that was worth my time? That, like, 10, 5, having, a certain number of people, and maybe it's not about the number. Maybe that's more ego.
Yeah. If I have ideas for programs to start, one being with kids.
Yeah.
We don't teach kids critical thinking skills. And so what happens is, the scenario I like to use is you got a party going on and two adults are talking, and little Johnny comes strolling up and just announces to a couple of people that, he's going to be a cowboy. Good for you, little Johnny. I'll pat him on the butt and send him along. The adults are talking now. What ought to happen is somebody ought to question him. Oh, that's cool. What do cowboys do? Do they ride horses? Do they, you're going to have a horse? Where are you going to get the horse? And do horses eat something? What do they eat? And where are you going to get the hay? And how do you take care of them? Do they sleep? Or where are you going to put them? And if that was a habit, things along that line, so that every time the kid comes and makes a decision and says, I want to do this, or I want to have this, whatever, where they were questioned about it, just in a way that makes them think about it, they're going to start doing that on their own as they grow, and it will just become a natural part of who they are, and they will make better decisions, right? Most of us just let life make our decisions for us. I want a new job, and the first thing that's offered, we say yes. And it doesn't matter if it's going in a direction that we really think is going to take us someplace, special or someplace good. We just say yes because it's a job. Yeah. Maybe it's more money, maybe it's not. It's just what I'm working. So life happens to us in that sense, rather than us creating things consciously. But the problem with that is that parents don't do that because parents don't question themselves. They don't know. And so it's a program that I want to take to schools, where the form in my mind right now is a number of speakers who would come on a regular basis, because you can't give anybody, this dose of, here's this new idea, and walk away and expect that it's going to take root. It just doesn't happen. This is mental programming that doesn't happen in an instant. So you need it reinforced. So you need somebody else to come back, or the same person, but you need somebody to come back in a week later, a month later, whatever it might be, and reinforce those ideas. And they're going to present it in a different way, which we all know might be the key for somebody.
Yeah.
I heard the same thing from the last guy, but it didn't click. You said it, standing on your head, and now I get it. So and so if we had a program like that was ongoing in different schools, I think that would make a huge difference. So that's one of the things that I have in mind at some point down the road.
Beautiful.
So, awesome. And it's, it goes to corporate, not the kids thing, but all these ideas go into the corporate world as well. The mindset of your employees directly impacts your bottom line.
Yeah.
Right? If you've got people who hate being there, they are not working hard. They're doing the minimum. They're taking more time off than they need to. Right? You're just not getting the production. Get somebody in there to talk to them and give them a way to look at it in a little different light, and things can do a 180 in really short fashion. So it's another area where it needs to happen.
Who would Tim Starr have to become to make that happen?
Who would Tim Starr have to become? You're asking these tough questions. I don't know. But that's a good question. I just need to be more visible, I think, which is part of what I'm doing here. Because I can put the program together pretty quickly. It's kind of the same message to everybody, just tweaked a little bit for the audience.
So it sounds like you'd have to become reputable. You'd have to become known. You'd have to have influence. You'd have to become a person of influence, a following, a brand.
Some combination of those things, absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I'm working on. So, it's interesting how things work. You and I only met through a series of coincidences, and I didn't take no from somebody. And which in that circumstance, I would have ordinarily just said, okay, well, he said no. And I just said, wait a minute. And I went back and sent him an email, and he said, okay. And so I met certain people, and through them I meet you and other people. And so, that's how it works, stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. I had to do that.
Courageous.
It's not hard. It's kind of like, I did telemarketing for a couple of years. And the hardest phone call to make is the first one. And because after that, it's just a habit. It's just, you're just doing it, and it's not hard, and it's really easy. But people are deathly afraid of picking up the phone and calling somebody. It's funny. So, life is full of little lessons that you have no idea when they're going to pay off. You don't even recognize them as lessons in the moment. But somewhere down the road, it's like, you know what? I'm able to do this because that happened to me.
Beautiful, beautiful example. So, Tim.
Sir.
What do you want people walking away from this interview with? We heard about critical thinking. I'm gonna take a couple of the obvious choices off the table. So critical thinking, ladies and gentlemen, think, ask questions, ask why, ask your kids why, ask the children around you growing up. That is huge, and I really acknowledge you for caring so much about the next generation and the legacy that we're leaving. That's beautiful. So what else do you want us to take away?
The biggest one on my list is personal responsibility. And it's something that's easy to talk about. It's easy to nod your head to. Yeah, I know I'm miserable because, it's my choices. But when your response is something like that, you're not owning it. Right. So, and you can only understand what that means when you're there. It's an experience thing. It's suddenly something clicks and you go, okay, yeah, that's me. So that's one, and that's a whole nother conversation about why people don't take responsibility. But so you have to have me come back for another show. But so that's one. Wherever you are and wherever you want to go, it's on you. It's on you. There's nobody else going to do it for you. Right behind that is the reality that you can do it. I'm learning that in a big way myself right now. Those are two biggies. It's if you accept it and then say, all right, I can do it, you're going to find some motivation that's going to make you say, what do I have to do? And when you ask that question, stuff is going to show up because you're going to actually look for it. When you're in that mindset where all you're doing is focusing on your problems, there's opportunities and solutions all around us all the time. But if you're focused down here, you're not able to see them. And you have to lift your eyes up away from the problem and start looking for solutions before you'll be able to take advantage of anything. So own it, and then start asking yourself, what can I do? Because stuff is there, it will show up. The right voice will show up for you. That's what I got. Those two. Those are the biggies.
Beautiful.
You start there, you're going to go places.
Yeah.
And if you're at the beginning of this whole process, then that's plenty. Beyond that is you're not ready to try to process all that.
Absolutely, man. How
got
do
to start
people?
at home.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to start at home base, right? Foundation. That foundation is so critical.
Yep.
How do people stay connected with you, Tim?
I've got a freebie. If anybody, because we all have stress that we deal with in our lives, and we think stress is the thing, but stress is a manifestation of anxiety. Right? We know something is happening, and we get all tensed up about it, and that creates a physical sensation, a physical reaction. Anxiety is the thing we need to focus on. I've got a free download. If you go to timcstar.com/anxiety.
Boom. Got it.
And star is just spelled with one R. You can get that as a freebie. It's I think 4 steps to relieve anxiety about anything. If you have any possibility, you might want to, thought that you might want to talk with me a little further, you can go to mindsetmissionary.com, and there's a link there. You can book a 30-minute discovery call. We'll talk about what's keeping you up at night, and see if I can't give you a trick or two to help you feel a little better right now. And then you can worry about tomorrow.
Awesome. Beautiful. Tim,
there's plenty more, but
What was that?
There's plenty more, but
there's plenty more. Yes. Yeah. Awesome. And they can find you on Facebook, right? Tim Starr.
Yeah, Facebook. Can I pimp my books?
Absolutely. Please.
This is
share.
out already. Share. My name is Prosperity.
Ooh, you see
beautiful. It's on Amazon. It's a kind of a parable about law of attraction. It's a page turner. There's a little bit of sex suggested. And this is the brand new one. This is the one I'm extra excited about right now.
Awesome.
Where's my stuff? If you're an Abraham Hicks fan, you'll recognize that phrase.
Yep.
That's set for release December 1st, I believe. So,
wow. Awesome, man. Awesome.
Anything else? If anybody's interested in that, go to timcstar.com and send me an email and put you on the list and let you know when it's ready.
Boom. So. Anything else?
No, I'll let you go. You don't have enough time. It's only 12 hours.
So, Tim, what do you want to be acknowledged for, man?
What do I want to be acknowledged for? In what sense? Like today or overall? Or
what do you want to be acknowledged for?
I'm acknowledging myself right now for stepping up and showing up in a bigger way than I have in the past. It's really kind of changed all kinds of things in my life in the last 2 months. I hope to be acknowledged for creating something that touches people a little bit, that gives people some hope, some ideas, some opportunity to change who they are, where they're going.
Awesome.
I'll
Tim,
stop there. I'm happy with that.
I acknowledge you, sir.
Thank you,
for creating your reality. Number one, you're consciously creating, and I acknowledge you for monitoring the space and the universe between your ears. And I acknowledge you for having so much courage, especially over the last 2 months, to take on bigger and bigger things, put yourself out there, take leaps of faith, trust that it's all going to work out. I acknowledge you for that. I also acknowledge you for planting seeds and laying a foundation of transformation and enlightenment and empowerment and education and critical thinking and being the creators of our reality. Everyone who comes across you, that's who you are. You plant seeds. You help people plant seeds. You're like there with them. Hey, let's plant this seed together. Let's plant this seed together. Let's plant this seed together. And I really acknowledge you for committing to leave a legacy that is worthy.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
It's when I'm learning to think big. you know, I'm still very much at the beginning of that journey. So
We all are.
Yeah. So,
We all are.
so thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You have the best day ever, brother. Keep
Thank
up
you.
the great
You too.
creation, and let me know how else I can support you. Keep me posted.